I still remember the sting of scrolling through social media, seeing my dad smiling on a beach with his new family, while I worked overtime to pay my college tuition. Sorry, son, tight budget this year, he had told me just weeks before. Now 3 years later, his text lights up my phone. My stepsister needs an internship at my company, and apparently I owe the family a favor. The audacity of his request reopened wounds I thought had healed. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button. Growing up, my dad was my hero. We spent countless weekends fishing at Lake Michigan, where he taught me how to cast a line and wait patiently for the perfect catch. Sunday afternoons were dedicated to watching Chicago Bears games together, both of us decked out in blue and orange, cheering until we lost our voices. Every birthday, he would wake me up with pancakes, shaped like whatever age I was turning. These traditions formed the foundation of our relationship. Everything changed when I turned 14. The arguments between my parents grew more frequent, hushed voices behind closed doors that eventually erupted into full-blown shouting matches. When they finally sat me down to announce their divorce, I was devastated, but not surprised. Dad promised nothing would change between us. "Sierra, you will always be my #1 priority," he assured me, squeezing my shoulder with that familiar strength that had always made me feel safe. For the first year, he kept his word. Our weekend traditions continued, albeit with the awkwardness of picking me up from Mom's apartment instead of just coming downstairs for breakfast. But then Melissa entered the picture. She was nice enough at first, always asking about school and encouraging my relationship with Dad. I was 16 when they got married in a small ceremony where I served as the best man. I gave a speech about new beginnings that Mom had helped me write, forcing a smile through the entire reception. Within a year, they welcomed my half-sister Emma into the world. Dad called me the moment she was born, excitement crackling through his voice as he described her tiny fingers and tuft of blonde hair. "You are a big brother now," he said proudly. I was genuinely happy for him, even as I noticed our weekends together becoming less frequent. The final addition came when Melissa's daughter from her previous marriage, Alicia, moved in permanently. She was 17, just a year older than me, with an attitude that made it clear she considered their house her territory. My bedroom was converted into a nursery for Emma, and during visits, I was relegated to the pull-out couch in the basement. I tried hard to fit into this new family dynamic. During our first Christmas together, I spent an entire paycheck from my part-time job at the grocery store buying thoughtful gifts for everyone. For Alicia, I found a limited edition vinyl of her favorite band after overhearing her complain that it was impossible to find. When she unwrapped it, she merely nodded and set it aside without a word of thanks. Dad did not notice, too busy filming Emma playing with wrapping paper. Despite these early warning signs, I remained optimistic that with time we would all adjust. I was determined to make my relationship with Dad work, even as I began to feel like a visitor in his new life. The first major betrayal came during my high school graduation. As the day approached, I reminded Dad multiple times about the ceremony and the dinner reservation Mom and I had made for all of us afterward. I would not miss it for the world, Sierra, he promised during our monthly lunch. I have even taken the whole day off work. We will celebrate properly. 2 days before graduation, he called. Alicia had a dance recital scheduled for the same time, and Melissa was insistent that the whole family attend. She has been practicing for months, Sierra. You understand how important this is, right? We can still meet for dinner afterward. I swallowed my disappointment and told him I understood. Family comes first, after all. I sat between Mom and my grandparents at graduation, trying not to notice the empty seats we had saved. When Dad texted that they would also have to miss dinner because the recital had run long and Emma was getting fussy, I pretended it did not bother me. It was 3 days later when the truth surfaced. Scrolling through Instagram, I saw photos of them at Wisconsin Dells, a full family weekend getaway that had clearly been planned well in advance. There was Alicia in her dance costume taking a bow, and subsequent pictures of them all enjoying the water park ice cream and miniature golf. The timestamps confirmed they had left immediately after her recital. No fussy baby, no running late. Just a deliberate choice to exclude me from their plans. Mom found me staring at my phone, tears streaming down my face. She sighed, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "I have been worried this might happen," she admitted. "Your father has always wanted to please whoever is in front of him. With you here and them, there you are at a disadvantage." Her brutal honesty hurt, but something in me refused to believe this was permanent. Surely Dad was just trying to make Melissa and her daughter feel welcome. Once they were more secure, he would make time for me again. I was wrong. Throughout my college years, the distance between us grew wider. Dad called occasionally, usually on holidays or my birthday conversations, that rarely lasted more than 10 minutes before he had to run off to some family obligation. I never told him about the 2 jobs I worked while maintaining a full course load or how I survived on ramen noodles to save enough for textbooks. "Money is tight right now," he would say whenever the subject of assistance came up, despite the new boat he purchased or the family trip to Disney World that plastered my social media feed. During my sophomore year, I declined his invitation to Thanksgiving dinner, choosing instead to pick up a holiday shift that paid time and a half. He seemed relieved rather than disappointed. By junior year, the invitations stopped coming altogether. My 21st birthday fell during final exams week. Mom sent a care package with homemade cookies and a gift card to my favorite restaurant. Dad promised to drive up that weekend to celebrate. Friday came and went with a text about Emma coming down with a cold. I spent the milestone birthday alone in my apartment, studying for organic chemistry and ignoring the hollow feeling in my chest. Despite everything, I thrived academically. My professor recommended me for an internship at a prestigious tech company, which turned into a job offer before graduation. The starting salary was impressive, especially for someone fresh out of college. When Dad called after the ceremony, I mentioned it casually, not expecting much of a reaction. His tone changed immediately. Suddenly, he was full of questions about the company, the position, my responsibilities. "That is my boy," he said proudly, as though he had contributed something to this accomplishment. A month later, he invited me to dinner with some of his work colleagues. Throughout the evening, he introduced me as my son, the tech wizard, regaling everyone with stories of how he had encouraged my interest in computers from an early age. Stories that were mostly fabricated or greatly exaggerated. I sat silently nursing my beer, wondering if he actually believed his own narrative, or if he knew he was lying. "We always knew he was destined for great things," he told his boss, slapping my back with enough force to make me spill my drink. Takes after his old man. I excused myself to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face and staring at my reflection. I hardly recognized the relationship he was describing. Yet some childish part of me still craved his approval, still wanted to believe he cared. The vacation incident was what finally opened my eyes to the reality of our relationship. After 6 months at my new job, I had saved enough to afford joining the family Christmas vacation to Florida that Dad had been planning. I offered to pay my own way, excited at the prospect of a week together, to possibly rebuild some of what we had lost. About that, Dad hedged during our phone call. "We are staying at a 3-bedroom condo, and space is already tight with the 5 of us." The disappointment must have been audible in my silence because he quickly added, "Maybe Easter instead. We could do something just the 2 of us." I agreed half-heartedly, having heard similar promises before. 3 days later, I was mindlessly scrolling through Facebook when I saw Melissa's status update. So excited to have Jeff and his kids joining us for our Florida Christmas. The more the merrier. Jeff was my dad's college roommate. His kids were strangers to me. Yet somehow they had earned spots on the vacation while I, his son, had been told there was not enough room. I stared at the phone, a cold realization settling in my gut. I was not just less important than his new family. I was less important than his old buddies, too. Throughout December, my social media feeds were flooded with images of their perfect family vacation. Dad and Alicia parasailing. Emma building her first sandcastle. Everyone together at a fancy Christmas dinner, raising glasses in a toast. I had been working overtime on a major project launch, spending the holiday alone in my apartment with takeout Chinese food and a bottle of cheap wine. On Christmas morning, I broke down and called him. It rang 4 times before he answered, the sounds of laughter and waves in the background. "Merry Christmas, Sierra," he shouted over the noise. "Can I call you back? We are about to go snorkeling." The call never came. My friend Jordan found me that evening halfway through the bottle of wine, scrolling obsessively through their vacation photos. He gently took my phone away and made me real dinner, listening as years of hurt and disappointment poured out of me. "Have you ever actually told him how you feel?" Jordan asked, as I finished my story. The truth was, I had not. I had spent years making excuses for him, convincing myself that his behavior was normal or temporary. When Dad returned from vacation, I worked up the courage to call him and express my feelings about being excluded. "Sierra, you are an adult now," he said dismissively. "Emma and Alicia are still kids. They need these family experiences more than you do." His response made it clear that in his mind, I was no longer part of the core family unit. I was an adult extension, someone to check in with occasionally, but not to include in the inner circle. That night, I researched therapists in my insurance network. It was time to address the abandonment issues I had been carrying for years. Through months of therapy, I began to recognize the patterns of behavior I had been enabling, and the unhealthy ways I still sought his approval. I learned to set boundaries and to value myself independently of his validation. I was making progress rebuilding my sense of self-worth, apart from his attention when the text arrived that would bring everything to a head. The message was casual, as though we spoke regularly. "Hey, Sierra, need to talk to you about something important. Coffee tomorrow." After 3 months of minimal contact, his sudden interest triggered warning bells, but curiosity won out. I agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my office during lunch. I arrived to find not just Dad, but Alicia sitting at a corner table. She had changed since I last saw her, trading her rebellious style for something more conventionally professional, though her expression still held that familiar, entitled look. Dad waved enthusiastically as though this were a regular occurrence rather than our first meeting in months. "Sierra, good to see you, son." He embraced me in a hug that felt performative. "You remember Alicia, right?" We exchanged awkward greetings before I slid into the seat across from them, already suspecting this was not the casual catch-up it had been presented as. Dad launched into exaggerated small talk, asking about my job in a way that emphasized its prestige. "Sierra here is absolutely killing it at Vertex Tech," he told Alicia, though he had never once visited my office or asked about my specific role. "Youngest team lead in company history, right, department coordinator?" I corrected. "What did you want to discuss, Dad?" He leaned forward, dropping his voice conspiratorially. "Well, as it happens, Alicia is finishing her business degree this semester, and she needs an internship to complete her credits." The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't about reconnecting. It was about leveraging my position. Alicia sat up straighter, her rehearsed smile firmly in place. "My program requires a 12-week internship in a corporate setting," she explained. "When Dad mentioned where you work, it seemed perfect." Dad jumped back in before I could respond. "I thought you could put in a word with HR, maybe expedite the process a bit. You know, family helping family." I took a sip of my coffee to buy time. "We have a pretty competitive internship program. Applications go through a formal review process." His expression hardened slightly. "Surely you have some pull there. After all, it is just an internship." "Has Alicia applied through the proper channels?" I asked, addressing her directly. She glanced at Dad before answering. "Not yet. We thought it would be better to speak with you first." Dad patted her hand. "Alicia has had a challenging semester. A few classes did not go as planned, but this internship would really turn things around." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean by did not go as planned?" After some prodding, the truth emerged. Alicia had failed multiple core classes and was on academic probation. Her GPA was well below our company's minimum requirement for interns. She needed not just any internship, but a prestigious one to salvage her academic standing. And rather than having her earn it, Dad expected me to hand it to her, potentially risking my professional reputation in the process. "I cannot just bypass our hiring protocols," I explained. "Candidates need to meet certain qualifications." Dad's friendly demeanor evaporated. "This is about family, Sierra. After everything we have done for you, you cannot do this one thing for your sister." The phrase struck me like a physical blow. Everything you have done for me. The words escaped before I could filter them. What exactly have you done for me in the past 6 years, Dad? His face flushed. I raised you, put a roof over your head. Until I was 14. Then you started a new family and left me behind. Alicia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Dad's expression hardened. That is ridiculous. Then, you were always welcome in our home. As a visitor. Never as a member of the family. Not for vacations. Not for holidays. Not even for my graduation. You are being dramatic. We had other obligations. Like the Florida trip you said was too crowded until you invited Jeff and his kids. His eyes narrowed. I do not appreciate your tone. All I am asking is for you to help your sister with this small thing. Step-sister, I corrected. And it is not small. You are asking me to compromise my professional integrity to clean up her academic mess. Dad leaned forward, voice lowered but intense. Family helps family, Sierra. Or have you forgotten what that means? The irony was too much. I stood up, gathering my things. I learned exactly what family means from you, Dad. It means being there only when it benefits you. I left them sitting there, Dad calling after me as I pushed through the door into the street. My hands were shaking as I walked back to my office, my mind replaying his audacious statement over and over. After everything we have done for you. What fantasy world was he living in? That evening I sat in my therapist's office, recounting the encounter, my anger still fresh. What bothers you most about this situation, she asked after I finished. The hypocrisy, I replied immediately. He abandoned me when I needed him, and now he expects me to risk my professional reputation to help Alicia. She nodded thoughtfully. And how do you feel about being asked to help Alicia specifically? The question gave me pause. I do not resent her personally. We were never close, but that was not her fault. What bothers me is being manipulated through guilt, being told I owe them when they have given me nothing. Do you feel you need your father's approval still? It was a question we had explored before, but in the context of today's encounter, it hit differently. I wanted it for so long, I admitted. I made excuses for him, convinced myself that if I just tried harder, he would make space for me again. But today, watching him try to use me after years of neglect, something broke. I do not think I want his approval anymore if this is what it costs. This realization felt monumental. For years, I had defined myself through the lens of being the forgotten son, always seeking that paternal validation. The idea that I could simply walk away from that need was both terrifying and liberating. Jordan's reaction when I told him that night was less measured. The absolute nerve of that man, he fumed, pacing my living room. He ignores you for years and then shows up with his hand out. I hope you told him exactly where to shove his request. I walked out, I said. But he has been texting all evening. Apparently I am being selfish and disappointing the family. Jordan snorted. What family? The one that consistently excludes you until they need something. His indignation on my behalf was validating. For so long I had questioned whether I was overreacting, whether my expectations of family were unreasonable. Having someone else recognize the injustice made me feel less crazy. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Dad's texts going unanswered on my phone. Each message escalated in emotional manipulation, moving from guilt to anger to pseudo-apologies designed to get what he wanted. In the darkness of my bedroom, I finally admitted to myself that this pattern would never change unless I changed my response to it. I needed to break the cycle of hoping for his approval and then being disappointed. I needed to set boundaries not just for this situation but for our relationship moving forward. The thought of confronting him directly made my stomach churn, but the alternative was returning to the emotional roller coaster I had been riding for years. By morning, I had made my decision. I would respond, but on my terms, establishing clear boundaries without burning bridges completely. I took a deep breath and dialed his number. Dad answered on the second ring, his voice cautious. Sierra, I was beginning to think you were ignoring me. I needed time to think, I replied, keeping my tone even. I cannot help Alicia bypass the application process at my company. Sierra, this is ridiculous. We are talking about family here. Yes, we are. And that is why this conversation needs to happen. I paused, gathering my thoughts. Dad, I cannot risk my professional reputation by giving preferential treatment to someone who does not meet our qualifications. So your job is more important than your family, than your sister. His voice rose with each word. Alicia is my stepsister, and while I wish her well, we both know she has never been treated as my equal in this family. You have consistently prioritized her and Emma over me. That is not true, he protested, though his voice lacked conviction. It is. From my graduation to holidays to vacations, I have always been the one left out. Now suddenly, I am family. When you need something from me, you are being childish. Holding on to old grudges. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. I am setting a boundary. If Alicia wants to apply for an internship at my company, she needs to do so through the proper channels. If she wants help preparing for interviews or building her resume, I am happy to offer that assistance. That is not enough, and you know it. Her grades are not competitive. Then perhaps she should address that issue first rather than expecting special treatment. His tone turned threatening. I did not want to have to say this, but your grandmother would be extremely disappointed to hear how you are treating family. The attempt at manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Grandma would be disappointed to hear how you have treated me for the past 8 years, Dad. But this is not about her, or about punishing you. It is about me refusing to compromise my integrity. So that is it. You will not help. The anger in his voice was palpable. I offered help that maintains my professional boundaries. That is all I can give. After everything I have done for you, he started again. Dad, I interrupted firmly. Please stop saying that. We both know the reality of our relationship. You have been an absent father since you remarried. You have excluded me from family events, forgotten important milestones, and offered no support during my college years. I have made peace with that, but I will not pretend it was different to ease your conscience. Silence stretched between us. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. I see you have made up your mind. Your mother really did a number on you. The attempt to blame Mom was the final straw. This conversation is over. If you want to talk when you are ready to be honest about our relationship, I will be here. Until then, I need some space. I ended the call before he could respond, my heart pounding, but my mind surprisingly clear. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with angry texts from both Dad and Alicia. Words like selfish, ungrateful, and family betrayal jumped out at me. I made the decision to block both numbers temporarily, giving myself space to process without their attempts to pull me back into the drama. That evening, Mom called. Your father phoned me, she said carefully. He seemed to think I should talk some sense into you. I sighed. Of course he did. What did you tell him? That you are an adult, making your own decisions, and that perhaps he should reflect on why you might be hesitant to help. Her tone softened. Are you okay, Sierra? For the first time in years, I answered that question honestly. Not yet, but I think I will be. The next 2 weeks passed without contact from Dad. I threw myself into work, trying not to obsess over whether I had permanently damaged our already fragile relationship. My therapist assured me that setting boundaries was healthy regardless of how others responded to them. You cannot control his reaction, she reminded me. You can only control how you respond to it. A month after our confrontation, I received an unexpected email from Alicia. The subject line read, Simply, I am sorry. Cautiously, I opened it. Sierra, I wanted to apologize for how everything happened with the internship situation. Dad made it seem like you would be happy to help, and I should have questioned that assumption. The truth is, I have been struggling in school because I chose business to please Dad, not because I have any interest or aptitude for it. After our meeting, I started thinking about how you stood up for yourself and your career, and it made me realize I need to make some changes too. I have decided to switch majors next semester. If you are willing, I would still appreciate your advice on career planning, but I understand if you would rather not. Again, I am sorry for putting you in that position. The email surprised me. In all our interactions, Alicia had never shown this level of self-awareness or consideration for my feelings. I responded carefully, thanking her for the apology and offering to meet for coffee to talk about her career interests without any pressure or expectations. Our coffee meeting was awkward at first, but gradually evolved into the most honest conversation we had ever had. She admitted feeling jealous of me growing up, believing I had escaped the high expectations Dad placed on her as the eldest daughter in the house. I shared my perspective of watching from the outside as Dad created a new family that seemed to have no place for me. He talks about you all the time. You know, she said, stirring her latte, about how successful you are, how smart. I think he takes credit for it in his mind, like your accomplishments somehow reflect on his parenting. That is comforting. And sad at the same time, I replied. Over the following months, Alicia and I developed a cautious friendship. I helped her prepare a proper resume and practice interview skills, which eventually led to her securing an appropriate internship at a company where she could learn without the pressure of family expectations. Our relationship was not close, but it was respectful, which felt like progress. Dad was another matter entirely. 2 months after our confrontation, he texted again asking to meet. The message was brief and uncharacteristically humble. I have been thinking about what you said. Can we talk? We met at a park-neutral territory away from prying eyes or interruptions. He looked older somehow, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. I spoke with your mother, he began awkwardly, and with Melissa. They both helped me see some things I have been blind to. He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. I have not been fair to you, Sierra. When I started my new family, I convinced myself you were grown up enough to understand that you did not need me as much as Emma and Alicia did. It was easier than admitting I was choosing what was convenient for me. His honesty caught me off guard. I had prepared for more manipulation, more guilt tactics, not this raw acknowledgement. I missed so many important moments, he continued, and instead of owning that failure, I pretended it was normal or necessary. I am sorry, Sierra. Truly sorry. Why now? I asked. Is this about Alicia's internship again? He shook his head. No. She found something on her own, actually. She told me about your coffee meetings, said you were helping her figure things out. He looked down at his hands. Made me realize I should have been doing that all along. For both of you. We talked for nearly 3 hours that day, more honestly than we had in years. I did not forgive everything, and he did not expect me to. But it was a start, a foundation for a new kind of relationship based on reality rather than obligation or pretense. Over the next year, we rebuilt slowly. He made efforts to include me in family events, but respected when I needed space. I established clear boundaries about topics like financial support or career favors, making it clear those were no longer on the table after years of absence. Sometimes he slipped back into old patterns, but when I called him on it, he listened instead of deflecting. Christmas came around again, and Dad invited me to join them for dinner. Just dinner. No grand vacation or elaborate plans. I accepted cautiously. The evening was not perfect, but it was real. Emma, now old enough to form her own opinions, attached herself to me, curious about her big brother who had been more myth than presence in her life. I began forming a relationship with my half-sister, on my own terms. Occasional ice cream dates or trips to the science museum, where we discovered a mutual fascination with space exhibits. These small connections felt more genuine than any forced family gathering ever had. My friendship with Jordan deepened as well, his unwavering support during the confrontation with Dad revealing a loyalty I had not fully appreciated before. He became part of what I now thought of as my chosen family, the people who were present by choice rather than obligation. Through therapy, I came to understand that while I could not change the past, I could determine what role Dad played in my life moving forward. I would never have the father-son relationship I had longed for as a child, but perhaps we could build something new that acknowledged both our history and our potential for growth. The greatest gift of this painful journey was learning to define my worth independently of Dad's validation. I found freedom in realizing that his treatment of me reflected his limitations, not my value. This awareness transformed all my relationships, making me more confident in setting boundaries and more deliberate in how I showed up for others. 1 year after the coffee shop confrontation, I received a text from Dad, proud of the man you have become, Sierra. Even prouder that you did it despite my failures, not because of my guidance. It was perhaps the most honest thing he had ever said to me. I have come to understand that forgiveness does not mean forgetting or enabling. It means releasing the expectation that the past could have been different and making peace with what is. Some days that is easier than others, but each step forward feels like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been lost in the shadow of rejection. If there is one thing this journey has taught me, it is that real love does not come with manipulation or conditions. It persists through disagreements and respects boundaries. It is honest about imperfections rather than presenting a facade of perfection. Today, I mentor young professionals at my company, consciously breaking the cycle of conditional support that defined my own experience. I listen to their ideas, celebrate their successes, and stand by them through failures, offering the guidance I wish I had received. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who only seemed to want a relationship when it benefited them? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complex family dynamics and finding your own path. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that your worth is not determined by those who failed to see your value.